You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. After Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, he was asked about, can you play this music? It's number 12. He was asked if winning the Heisman impacted his decision whether or not he was going to play in the bowl game.
Does this impact your decision to maybe play one more game at LSU?
Answer your second question. We'll see. I'm trying to enjoy this moment right now.
And Brian Kelly. Sorry, I thought Brian Kelly was asked about it as well. He wasn't. I've said I don't know what Jaden's going to do. My guess, and it'll be very clear, underlined, bold, bright light flashing guess. I do not know what Jaden Daniels is going to do. My guess is that he does not play in the bowl game. He goes home to California. He works out with his quarterback's coach and prepares for the Senior Bowl. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl and the Combine, aces the interviews and the medical and all that stuff, and becomes a top 10 pick. That's what I think is going to happen. I would selfishly would love to see Jaden Daniels play in the bowl game. Love to see him go run it back one more time in the purple and the gold. Remember, bowl stats count toward your statistics. So Jaden Daniels goes and puts out another monster game. What do those final totals look like in 13 games as opposed to 12? Again, that may not matter a lick, or what I should say actually is the opportunity to go get ready for what everyone describes as the biggest job interview of your life matters more than that. And I get it. And I would totally understand if Jaden Daniels did not play in the bowl game. And I don't suspect he will. I am going to be more interested as this week goes along to see a lot of the decisions that are made. And I do suspect now the evaluations for the team are over. The Heisman is in the rearview mirror. And the Tigers are beginning now their bowl prep. That now is when we're going to start getting a lot of these announcements like today and this week on who else is entering the portal, who's returning for a senior season, who's going into the draft. One of the portal players LSU is hosting today on Monday is Zavion Thomas. We've talked about him. Zavion Thomas went to John Ehret, New Orleans, did not have an LSU offer out of high school, went to Mississippi State. He's been there for 2 years. He had a really nice season this year, 40 catches for 503 yards. Keep in mind, that was an atrocious passing offense. Mississippi State was 13th in the SEC out of 14 in passing offense this year, and still Thomas had 40 catches for 503 yards. Of course, WR Thomas was at Mississippi State, transferred to Georgia, so it opened the door for a number one, and Zavion Thomas played really well. Not only is he a really good pass catcher, he's also a punt returner. So yes, LSU has identified him as a top-tier guy, and they'd love to get him here. Also has interest from Auburn, Arkansas, and Oregon. So we'll see what ultimately he elects to do with his decision. LSU's made it a priority. We'll see if they're able to get him. And I've been very clear. I think LSU should add a portal wide receiver because we're all assuming Neighbors, Thomas are going pro, and Kyron Lacy is the decision. Does Kyron Lacy come back or not? If Kyron Lacy doesn't, then the only two receivers on your team with catch are Chris Hilton and Aaron Anderson, who have combined for 39 career catches. Zavion Thomas had 40 last year at Mississippi State. So his production this past year at Mississippi State would be more than the collective returning production of all of your receivers if you don't return any of Neighbors, Thomas, and Lacy. We focus so much on Kyron Lacy and his decision, assuming that Neighbors and Thomas are gone. But I want to present something that Brian Thomas might at least be considering. Don't laugh me out the building. I just want to throw it out there, okay? Because when people ask consistently how NIL might change people's minds, this is something to consider, okay? What if Brian Thomas stays? Hear me out. By the way, I think Brian Thomas is going to be a first-round pick, and if he is, he should go. But consider this, okay? Mel Kiper ranks Brian Thomas as the 6th best receiver in this draft, in a very deep receiver draft. Last year, the 6th receiver taken was Jaden Reed, who went in round 2, 50th overall. We always say, oh, he's a first-round pick, first-round pick. Even if someone has a first-round grade, it doesn't mean they're going to go in round 1. There has to be a team that wants a receiver picking at that spot that likes the player that chooses that player over another player at that position. There have been plenty of great players who fell out of round 1. So what if Brian Thomas is in that situation? For what it's worth, Jaden Reed last year, the 6th receiver taken, went 50th overall to Green Bay and signed a 4-year, $7.1 million contract with a $4 million signing bonus. What if Brian Thomas comes back and becomes a top 15 pick in the draft? Basically does what Malik Neighbors did and becomes a top 10 pick projected in the draft. I have seen Brian Thomas mocked as high as 32nd. I'm sure there are probably some others that maybe have him higher, but let's assume that he does go 32nd in the draft. End of round 1. That's $11.8 million with a $5.6 million signing bonus. That is, by most anybody's definition, life-changing money, and I would not recommend passing on that. But what if you could get a handsome NIL payday, come back for another year, be the number 1 guy, the beneficiary of all the targets, have a season like Malik did, and be the number 1 receiver in next year's draft, and be a top 10 pick with a contract north of $20 million? Would it be worth it? That's the kind of conversation or decision I think that Brian Thomas has to make. And it may be a really easy one. He may just be ready to go. He knows he's got a 7-figure payday coming his way in a few months, and that may be it, and I wouldn't blame him one iota. But it is at least something worth considering as people ask, in the NIL era, how might things change? How might players' decisions change? Well, this is an example of how it might. Could Brian Thomas come back to school, make a bunch of money to come back and play one more year, and in so doing, elevate his draft stock, bet on himself to potentially add another $10 million to his contract next year? Just something to consider. Look, if he's a round 1 guy, he's a surefire round 1 guy, I think you go. I think we would all understand it. But it's going to be interesting to watch to see if that does alter those decisions. But listen, if you have Kyron Lacy back, and regardless of what happens with Thomas, if it's Lacy, Hilton, Anderson, Sampson, Brown, Parker, Preon, the incoming freshman, and if you're able to add Zavion Thomas as well, if you're wondering who's going to step up, someone among that group of 10 names I just rattled off is going to step up and be awesome. I'm not worried about LSU's receiver room. And that will be a great benefit to Garrett Nussmeier next year when he takes over the reins of this offense. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.